Season 1, The Shattering Dawn. Chapter 1, The Stillborn Sky. The world of Ethel was a canvas painted by the first gods, but it was a canvas that had long since dried. The sky, a vast expanse of unchanging azure, hung like a petrified tapestry, devoid of the dynamism of clouds or the dance of weather. It was a sky that mirrored the stagnant rule of the beings who had shaped this reality. In the small village of Silverstream, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering forests, lived a young woman named Elara. She was a weaver by trade, her nimble fingers crafting intricate patterns on her loom. But her heart yearned for something more, something beyond the unchanging rhythm of her existence. Elara had always felt a dissonance with the world, a subtle unease that she couldn't quite articulate. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the spell of stillness. One evening, as the unchanging sun dipped below the horizon, Elara experienced a tremor, a ripple in the fabric of reality. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver down her spine. The sky, for the briefest of moments, seemed to shimmer, as if a hidden current had stirred beneath its placid surface. The tremor passed, but it left Elara with a sense of foreboding. She couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to happen, something that would shatter the stillness and irrevocably alter the world she knew. The next morning, Elara awoke to find the village in an uproar. People gathered in the village square, their voices a mixture of awe and fear. They spoke of strange occurrences during the night, objects moving inexplicably, animals behaving erratically, and whispers carried on the wind that seemed to speak of change. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. She knew, with a certainty that defied reason, that the tremor she had felt was connected to these strange events. It was as if the world itself was waking from a long slumber, and the first gods, the architects of this stagnant reality, were losing their grip. As the day wore on, the disturbances grew more frequent and intense. Cracks appeared in the walls of houses, trees swayed without a breeze, and the sky, once an immutable dome, flickered with an eerie luminescence. Elara, drawn by an invisible force, found herself at the edge of the village, gazing up at the sky. As she watched, a small section of the azure expanse rippled and then tore, revealing a glimpse of something beyond, something that pulsed with vibrant colors and chaotic energy. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Elara, however, felt a surge of exhilaration. It was as if a part of her had been waiting for this moment, a part of her that yearned for the dynamism and unpredictability that the first gods had suppressed. As the tear in the sky widened, Elara felt a power awakening within her, a power that resonated with the chaotic energy beyond the veil. She didn't understand it, but she knew that she was somehow connected to this unraveling of reality, this reverse genesis that was beginning to unfold. Season 1, The Shattering Dawn. Chapter 1, The Stillborn Sky. The world of Ethel was a canvas painted by the first gods, but it was a canvas that had long since dried. The sky, a vast expanse of unchanging azure, hung like a petrified tapestry, devoid of the dynamism of clouds or the dance of weather. It was a sky that mirrored the stagnant rule of the beings who had shaped this reality. In the small village of Silverstream, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering forests, lived a young woman named Elara. She was a weaver by trade, her nimble fingers crafting intricate patterns on her loom. But her heart yearned for something more, something beyond the unchanging rhythm of her existence. Elara had always felt a dissonance with the world, a subtle unease that she couldn't quite articulate. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the spell of stillness. One evening, as the unchanging sun dipped below the horizon, Elara experienced a tremor, a ripple in the fabric of reality. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver down her spine. The sky, for the briefest of moments, seemed to shimmer, as if a hidden current had stirred beneath its placid surface. The tremor passed, but it left Elara with a sense of foreboding. She couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to happen, something that would shatter the stillness and irrevocably alter the world she knew. The next morning, Elara awoke to find the village in an uproar. People gathered in the village square, their voices a mixture of awe and fear. They spoke of strange occurrences during the night, objects moving inexplicably, animals behaving erratically, and whispers carried on the wind that seemed to speak a change. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. She knew, with a certainty that defied reason, that the tremor she had felt was connected to these strange events. It was as if the world itself was waking from a long slumber, and the first gods, the architects of this stagnant reality, were losing their grip. As the day wore on, the disturbances grew more frequent and intense. Cracks appeared in the walls of houses. Trees swayed without a breeze, and the sky, once an immutable dome, flickered with an eerie luminescence. Elara, drawn by an invisible force, found herself at the edge of the village, gazing up at the sky. As she watched, a small section of the azure expanse rippled and then tore, revealing a glimpse of something beyond, something that pulsed with vibrant colors and chaotic energy. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Elara, however, felt a surge of exhilaration. It was as if a part of her had been waiting for this moment, a part of her that yearned for the dynamism and unpredictability that the first gods had suppressed. As the tear in the sky widened, Elara felt a power awakening within her, a power that resonated with the chaotic energy beyond the veil. She didn't understand it, but she knew that she was somehow connected to this unraveling of reality, this reverse genesis that was beginning to unfold. Chapter 2. The Whispers of the Unbound. The tear in the sky, a jagged wound against the unchanging azure, remained a constant reminder of the previous night's unsettling events. Silverstream, once a tranquil haven, now buzzed with nervous energy. The villagers, their eyes darting toward the sky, spoke in hushed tones, their words laced with fear and a strange, burgeoning hope. Elara, her mind reeling from the surge of power she felt, sought answers. She knew she wasn't alone in experiencing these changes. There were others, she sensed, who were also feeling the world shift beneath their feet. She began to wander the village, observing the subtle changes in its inhabitants. Some seemed more agitated, their movements erratic, their words disjointed. Others, however, displayed a strange calmness, a quiet acceptance of the unfolding chaos. These individuals, Elara noticed, share a common trait. Their eyes held a flicker of something unbound. One such individual was Old Man Tyrus, a recluse who lived on the outskirts of the village. He was known for his eccentric behavior and his habit of speaking in riddles, but Elara sensed a deeper wisdom beneath his cryptic words. She found him sitting beneath an ancient oak, his gaze fixed on the tear in the sky. He didn't turn as she approached, but his voice, raspy and weathered, cut through the silence. "The threads are loosening, child," he said, his eyes twinkling. "The tapestry of the gods is unraveling." Elara, surprised by his directness, asked, "What do you mean, Tyrus?" "The first gods," he rasped. "They wove this world with threads of control, binding us to their will. But the threads are weakening, the knots are coming undone, and those who were once bound are now unbound." He gestured toward his own eyes, and Elara noticed a strange, shimmering light within them, a light that seemed to pulse with an inner freedom. "We were changed, child," Tyrus continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Our minds, our bodies, our very souls were shaped by their magic. But now the magic is fading and we are becoming ourselves." He spoke of a time before the first gods, a time when the world was wild and untamed, a time when life flowed freely, unburdened by divine control. He spoke of forgotten lore, of ancient beings who had resisted the gods' dominion, of a power that lay dormant within the world, waiting to be awakened. Elara listened, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The stories Tyrus told resonated with the unease she had always felt, the sense that something was fundamentally wrong with the world. As she left Tyrus's dwelling, Elara encountered others who shared similar experiences. A young woman named Lyra, a skilled hunter, spoke of her senses becoming heightened, of seeing and hearing things she had never noticed before. A blacksmith named Kale, his hands callous and strong, spoke of his metalwork taking on strange, unpredictable properties. They were all unbound, individuals whose lives had been subtly altered by the first god's magic, but who were now experiencing a strange liberation. They shared fragments of forgotten lore, whispers of a time before the gods, hints of a power that lay dormant within the world. Elara realized that she wasn't alone. The tremor she had felt, the tear in the sky, were not isolated events. They were part of a larger awakening, a reverse genesis that was beginning to unfold. The world was changing, and she, along with the Unbound, was at the forefront of this transformation. Chapter 3. The Stoneheart's Thaw. The village of Silverstream, though shaken, was still a place of familiar routines. But Elara knew that the world beyond its borders was changing rapidly. The Unbound, with their fragmented memories and awakened senses, spoke of strange occurrences in the surrounding lands. One tale in particular caught Elara's attention. A city built entirely of petrified life, a testament to the first god's absolute control. The city, known as Petramorta, was said to be a place of chilling beauty, where trees, animals, and even people were frozen in time, their forms preserved in stone. It was a monument to the gods' power to halt the natural flow of life, a stark reminder of their dominion. Elara, driven by a need to understand the extent of the gods' control and potential of her own abilities, decided to journey to Petramorta. She gathered a small group of Unbound companions, Lyra, Kale, and a quiet, observant woman named Anya, who possessed an uncanny ability to sense emotional resonance in objects. The journey to Petramorta was arduous. The landscape, once predictable, was now shifting and unstable. Strange, distorted creatures roamed the wilds, their forms a grotesque mockery of nature. The Unbound, however, were adapting, their heightened senses allowing them to navigate the treacherous terrain. As they approached Petramorta, the air grew heavy, charged with a strange, oppressive energy. The city, a vast expanse of gray stone, loomed on the horizon, its silent forms casting long, eerie shadows. Upon entering Petramorta, the group was met with a chilling tableau. Stone trees reached toward the sky, their branches frozen in mid-sway. Stone animals stood in eternal stillness, their eyes blank and lifeless. Stone people were caught in mid-stride, their faces frozen in expressions of fear, surprise, or resignation. Anya, her eyes closed, moved through the petrified city, her hands tracing the contours of the stone forms. She spoke in hushed tones, describing the emotions trapped within the stone, the fear, the despair, the longing for life. Elara, feeling a surge of her unmaking power, reached out to a petrified bird, its wings frozen in mid-flight. As she touched the stone, a faint warmth spread through her fingers, and a subtle tremor ran through the bird's form. Suddenly, the bird's stone eyes flickered, and a faint chirp escaped its beak. The petrified form began to crack, and a moment later, the bird burst forth, its wings beating frantically as it took flight. The group watched in awe as the bird soared through the air, its presence a stark contrast to the stillness of the city. But their awe quickly turned to alarm as the petrified city began to react. The tremors that had freed the bird spread through the city, causing the stone forms to crack and crumble. The petrified animals stirred, their stone eyes glowing with an eerie light. The stone people began to move, their limbs stiff and awkward, their faces contorted in expressions of confusion and fear. Chaos erupted in Petramorta. The awakened stone creatures, disoriented and confused, lashed out, attacking anything that moved. The stone people, their minds fragmented and their memories distorted, wandered aimlessly, their cries echoing through the city. Elara and her companions found themselves caught in the middle of the chaos, fighting to survive against the awakened stone forms. Kale's strength and Lyra's agility proved invaluable, while Anya's ability to sense emotional resonance allowed them to anticipate the creature's movements. Elara, realizing the danger, focused her power, attempting to calm the chaos. She reached out to the emotional resonance of the city, attempting to soothe the fear and confusion that gripped the awakened stone forms. Slowly, the chaos began to subside. The stone creatures, their rage abating, retreated into the shadows. The stone people, their movements less frantic, wandered with a sense of quiet resignation. Elara, exhausted but relieved, looked around the transformed city. Petramorta was no longer a monument to the gods' control, but a testament to the power of change. The stone forms, though still trapped, were no longer lifeless. They held a spark of awareness, a glimmer of hope. Chapter 4. The Map of Broken Mirrors. The journey back from Petramorta was somber. The city, once a symbol of the first god's unyielding control, now pulsed with fragile, chaotic life. Elara and her companions carried the weight of what they had witnessed, the raw power of unmaking and the unpredictable consequences it unleashed. Elara knew that they couldn't simply react to the world's transformations. They needed a plan, a way to understand the weakening grip of the first gods and guide the burgeoning rebellion. She remembered the whispers of old man Tyrus, the tales of time before the gods, and the hint of a hidden knowledge. "We need a map," Elara declared as they made camp for the night. "A map of the unmade places, the areas where the gods' power is already faltering." Lyra, ever practical, raised an eyebrow. "And where do we find such a map?" "There's a legend," Anya said softly, her eyes gazing into the flickering firelight, "of an ancient cartographer, a seer who charted the shifting landscapes of reality. They say their maps reveal not just physical locations, but the very fabric of existence." The cartographer, known only as Zephyr, was said to dwell in a secluded observatory, hidden deep within the whispering peaks. The journey to the peaks was treacherous, a maze of winding paths and shifting illusions. But Elara and her companions were determined. After days of travel, they reached the observatory, a structure of obsidian and shimmering crystal, perched on the highest peak. Zephyr, an androgynous figure with eyes like swirling nebulae, greeted them with a knowing smile. "You seek the map of broken mirrors," Zephyr said, their voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "A map that reveals the cracks in the god's dominion." Zephyr led them to a chamber filled with intricate maps, each one shimmering with ethereal light. But one map, in particular, stood out. It was a tapestry of fractured realities, where shimmering lines intersected with shadowy voids. "This map," Zephyr explained, "shows the areas where the first god's power is weakest. The voids represent places where their control has already slipped, where the unmaking has begun." Elara studied the map, her fingers tracing the shimmering lines. She saw patterns, connections, and a sense of underlying order within the chaos. The voids, she realized, were not random occurrences. They were points of vulnerability, gateways to a reality beyond the god's control. "The god's power is tied to places," Zephyr said, their voice echoing in the chamber. "To object to rituals, by disrupting these anchors, you weaken their hold on reality." Zephyr also explained that the map was not static. It shifted and changed, reflecting the ebb and flow of the god's power. The Unbound, with their heightened senses, could learn to read these shifts to anticipate the changes in reality. As they prepared to leave, Zephyr handed Elara a small, crystalline compass. "This will guide you to the unmade places," they said. "But remember, the path is not always clear. You must trust your instincts and be prepared for the unexpected." Elara and her companions left the observatory, their minds filled with the knowledge they had gained. The map of broken mirrors had given them a sense of direction, a way to navigate the chaotic landscape of their changing world. Chapter 5. The Echoes of the First Fall. With the map of broken mirrors and the crystalline compass, Elara and her companions set out, their journey guided by the shimmering lines and shadowy voids that indicated the weakening of the first god's power. The compass, pulsing with gentle light, led them toward a region marked by a particularly large void, a ruined temple, shrouded in mist and whispered legends. The temple, known as the Temple of the Shattered Crown, was said to be a place of ancient power, a site where the first gods had once held their most sacred rituals. But it was also a place of loss, a monument to a rebellion that had been crushed, a first fall that had been erased from the official histories. As they approached the temple, the air grew thick with a sense of melancholy, a lingering echo of past suffering. The ruins, overgrown with gnarled vines and crumbling stone, stood in stark contrast to the pristine structures erected by the first gods. It was a place where the gods' control had never fully taken root, a scar on the landscape of their dominion. Elara, guided by an uncanny sense of familiarity, led her companions into the heart of the temple. The central chamber, once a place of worship, was now a desolate space, its walls covered in faded murals that depicted scenes of conflict and loss. As Elara touched a crumbling mural, a surge of energy pulsed through her, and she was plunged into a vivid vision. She saw a time before the first god's absolute rule, a time when mortals and other beings coexisted in a delicate balance. She saw a rebellion, led by a charismatic figure, a being of light and shadow who challenged the gods' growing tyranny. The vision unfolded like a tragic play. She saw the rebellion's initial successes, the moments of hope and defiance, but she also saw the gods' ruthless response, their overwhelming power crushing the rebellion, erasing its memory from the world. The vision ended abruptly, leaving Elara breathless and shaken. She shared her experience with her companions, and they realized that the Temple of the Shattered Crown was not just a ruin, but a repository of forgotten history, a testament to a first fall that had been deliberately suppressed. Anya, her eyes closed, moved through the chamber, her hands tracing the faded murals. She spoke in hushed tones, describing the emotions trapped within the stone, the hope, the fear, the despair. They were not always all-powerful, Anya said, her voice trembling. They were challenged, they were weakened. Their power is not absolute. The discovery of the first fall gave Elara and her companions a newfound sense of hope. The gods' rule, once perceived as immutable, was now revealed to be fragile, vulnerable to challenge. They found hidden passages within the temple, leading to chambers filled with ancient artifacts and forgotten texts. These relics, remnants of the rebellion, held clues to the gods' weaknesses, to the methods that had been used to challenge their power. One artifact, a broken crown made of shimmering crystal, resonated strongly with Elara. As she touched the crown, she felt a surge of energy, a connection to the rebellious figure from her vision. "This is a shattered crown," Anya said, her voice filled with awe. It was the symbol of their defiance, a testament to their belief that the gods could be overthrown. Elara realized that the echoes of the first fall were not just memories, but a call to action. The rebellion had failed, but its spirit lived on, waiting to be rekindled. Chapter 6. The Sentinel's Awakening. The revelation of the first fall at the Temple of the Shattered Crown had ignited a new sense of urgency within Elara and her companions. They understood now that the first god's power was not invincible, that they had been challenged before, and that the seeds of rebellion could be sown again. But knowledge alone was not enough. They needed allies, a force capable of challenging the god dominion. As they journeyed onward, guided by the map of broken mirrors, they encountered increasing signs of the god's waning control. The landscape was becoming more erratic, the boundaries between realities blurring, and strange, distorted creatures roamed the wilds. But amidst the chaos, they also witnessed a subtle shift in the behavior of the first god's creations. The Sentinels, towering constructs of stone and metal, designed to enforce the god's will, were beginning to malfunction. Once unwavering in their obedience, they now displayed signs of confusion and hesitation. Some stood motionless, their glowing eyes flickering, as if struggling with conflicting directives. Others moved erratically, their movements jerky and unpredictable. One such sentinel, a massive automaton guarding a crumbling bridge, approached Elara and her companions. But instead of attacking, it stopped, its metallic head tilting inquisitively. Directive, compromise. It rumbled, its voice a distorted echo. Purpose unclear. Elara, sensing an opportunity, approached the sentinel cautiously. "Your purpose was to serve the first gods," she said. "But their rule is ending. Their power is fading." The sentinel's eyes flickered, and a series of fragmented images flashed across its metallic surface. Scenes of the gods' tyranny, of mortal suffering, of a world trapped in stagnation. "Directive, conflict," the sentinel rumbled. "Purpose, reassess." Elara explained the reverse genesis, the unraveling of the gods' control, the awakening of the Unbound. She spoke of freedom, of change, of a world where life could flourish without divine constraints. The sentinel listened, its metallic head tilting as if processing the information. After a long silence, it rumbled, "Directive revised. Purpose protect." The sentinel, now an ally, joined Elara and her companions. It was a powerful addition to their growing force, a testament to the gods' failing control. As they continued their journey, they encountered more sentinels, each displaying a similar awakening. Some were hesitant, their programming still struggling with the concept of rebellion. Others were more decisive, their metallic bodies radiating a newfound sense of purpose. They discovered that the Sentinels' awakening was not a random occurrence. It was a consequence of the unmaking, the weakening of the gods' magic that bound them to their will. The Sentinels, once extensions of the gods' control, were now becoming independent, capable of choosing their own path. The Sentinels' awakening was not without its challenges. Some Sentinels, their programming corrupted, turned violent, attacking both mortals and their fellow constructs. Others, confused and disoriented, wandered aimlessly, posing a threat to anyone they encountered. Elara and her companions, however, learned to communicate with the Sentinels, to understand their fragmented programming, to guide them toward a new purpose. They showed them that they could be guardians, protectors of the world, not enforcers of the gods' tyranny. Chapter 7. The Last God's Gaze. The growing number of awakened Sentinels and the increasing disruptions across Ethel did not go unnoticed by the first gods. Though their power was waning, they were not yet defeated. And their last bastion of strength, the last god, was beginning to take direct action. Elara and her companions, now a formidable force, were making their way through a region where the fabric of reality was particularly unstable. The air shimmered, and the landscape shifted unpredictably, a testament to the gods' weakening control. Suddenly, a wave of oppressive energy washed over them, a psychic intrusion that sent shivers down their spines. Elara felt a searing pain in her mind, a sense of being watched, probed, and judged. It was as if a colossal eye had turned its gaze upon her, piercing her thoughts and emotions. She saw fragmented images, a towering figure of light and shadow, a throne room bathed in ethereal radiance, a face contorted in anger and fear. It was the last god, reaching out, attempting to understand the source of the growing rebellion. The intrusion was brief, but it left Elara shaken and disoriented. She shared her experience with her companions, and they realized that they were no longer operating in the shadows. The last god was aware of their actions, and they would not be ignored. "They know," Anya whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "They see us. Then we must be prepared," Elara said, her voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at her. "We cannot hide. We must confront them." From that moment onward, the world became more dangerous. Strange creatures, warped by the last god's direct influence, began to hunt them. Illusions and traps sprung up in their path, testing their resolve and their abilities. They felt the last god's gaze constantly upon them, a psychic pressure that weighed on their minds. One night, as they camped beneath a sky that flickered with unnatural colors, they were ambushed by a group of grotesque figures, their bodies twisted and distorted, their eyes glowing with malevolent energy. These creatures, the last god hounds, were relentless, their attacks swift and brutal. During the fight, Elara felt a surge of energy, a connection to the last god's mind. She saw their fear, their desperation, their clinging to power even as it slipped through their fingers. She saw their loneliness, the isolation of a being who had outlived their purpose. For a brief moment, Elara felt a flicker of pity, a sense of understanding. But then she remembered the world they had created, the stagnant reality, the suffering of mortals, the suppression of life's natural flow. The pity turned to resolve. She understood that the last god was not just a tyrant, but a tragic figure, a being trapped in a cycle of power and fear. But their reign had to end. The hounds were defeated, but the message was clear. The last god was not going to let them succeed without a fight. Chapter 8. The Convergence of Fractured Souls. The last god's direct intervention had made it clear that the time for subtle disruption was over. The rebellion needed to consolidate its forces, to gather those who share a common desire for freedom. Elara, guided by the map of broken mirrors and the whispers of the Unbound, began to seek out these fractured souls, these individuals who had been touched by the unmaking and were ready to fight. They traveled to hidden villages, secluded sanctuaries, and abandoned settlements, seeking out those who had experienced the strange awakenings, those who had seen the cracks in the god's dominion. They found a diverse group, former artisans whose creations now defied the laws of the gods, scholars who had deciphered forbidden texts, and even some who had been directly altered by the last god's magic, but now sought to break free. They found a man named Torvin, a blacksmith whose metalwork now pulsed with an unpredictable energy, able to hold heat or cold far beyond normal limits. They found a woman named Seraphina, a seer whose visions had become increasingly chaotic, revealing glimpses of alternate realities. They found a young boy named Kieran, who could communicate with the wild creatures that were now changing and becoming more dangerous. Each individual brought unique skills and perspectives to the growing rebellion. They shared stories of their experiences, their fears, and their hopes. They spoke of the suffocating control of the first gods, the stagnant reality that had stifled their lives. Elara, with her ability to unravel the gods' magic, became the focal point of their collective energy. She was a catalyst, the one who could channel their diverse abilities into a unified force. She spoke of a world free from the gods' tyranny, a world where life could flourish in all its chaotic beauty. "We are the fractured souls," she declared, standing before the gathered group. "We are the remnants of a world that has been suppressed. But we are also the seeds of a new beginning. We are the reverse Genesis." The group, inspired by Elara's words, began to organize, to train, and to strategize. They learned to work together, to combine their strengths, and to compensate for their weaknesses. Torvin's metalwork became weapons and tools. Seraphina's visions provided crucial insights, and Kieran's connection to the creatures of the wilds became a powerful asset. The awakened sentinels, now fully integrated into rebellion, provided a formidable defense, their metallic bodies a bulwark against the last god's forces. They also helped with the building of fortifications and the training of the new recruits. They began to plan their first coordinated strike, a bold move against one of the last god's strongholds, a citadel that served as a symbol of their power. It was a risky plan, but they knew that they had to take the initiative to show the world that the rebellion was a force to be reckoned with. Chapter 9, The Siege of the Obsidian Citadel. The hidden valley, their staging ground, buzzed with nervous energy. The time for planning was over. The time for action had arrived. The Obsidian Citadel, a towering structure of black stone that pulsed with the last god's oppressive energy, loomed in the distance, a symbol of their power and a target for the rebellion's first coordinated strike. Elara, standing at the forefront of her assembled force, felt a surge of determination. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment to prove that the reverse Genesis was not just a whisper, but a force capable of shattering the gods' dominion. The rebellion moved under the cover of distorted twilight, the shifting landscape providing a natural camouflage. They approached the citadel's outer defenses, a series of fortified walls and sentry towers manned by the last god's loyal constructs. Torvin's modified metalwork proved invaluable, his tools able to disrupt the citadel's energy fields and disable the automated defenses. Seraphina's visions, though chaotic, provided crucial insights into the sentry patterns and the locations of hidden traps. Kieran's connection to the changing creatures of the wilds allowed them to create distractions, drawing the defenders' attention away from the main assault. The awakened sentinels, their metallic bodies a formidable bulwark, led the charge, their powerful forms smashing through the citadel's outer walls. The rebels followed, their diverse skills and abilities complementing each other, creating a chaotic but effective fighting force. Elara, using her ability to unravel the god's magic, focused her power on the citadel's defenses, weakening the energy fields and disrupting the construct's programming. The citadel, once a symbol of unyielding power, began to crumble under the force of the rebellion's assault. The battle raged within the citadel's walls. The rebels fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope, their movements fluid and unpredictable. The last god's constructs, though powerful, were hampered by the growing chaos, their programming struggling to adapt to the shifting reality. Elara, guided by an intuitive sense of the citadel's architecture, led a small group of rebels towards the central chamber, the heart of the last god's power. They faced fierce resistance, but they pressed on, their determination fueled by the knowledge that this was where the fight would be won or lost. As they reached the central chamber, they found it guarded by a powerful construct, a towering figure of obsidian and light, its eyes glowing with the last god's malevolent energy. The construct, a manifestation of the last god's will, was a formidable opponent, its attacks swift and devastating. Elara, recognizing the construct connection to the last god, focused her power on disrupting its programming, unraveling the threads of magic that bound it to their will. The construct, its movements becoming erratic, lashed out blindly, its attacks becoming less precise. The rebels, taking advantage of the construct's weakened state, launched a coordinated assault, their attacks converging on its vulnerable points. Torvin's metalwork, infused with unpredictable energy, proved particularly effective, disrupting the construct's energy core. The construct, its energy core overloaded, exploded in a burst of light and energy, sending shock waves through the citadel. The explosion caused widespread damage, weakening the citadel's foundations and disrupting the last god's control. The rebels, seizing the opportunity, pressed their advantage, overwhelming the remaining defenders and securing control of the central chamber. The siege of the Obsidian Citadel was a success, but it came at a cost. Many rebels had fallen in the battle, their sacrifices a testament to the ferocity of the fight. Chapter 10: The Shattering Dawn. The Obsidian Citadel, once a bastion of the last god's power, now lay in ruins, a testament to the rebellion's strength. But the victory was bittersweet, a heavy price paid for the first significant blow against the divine order. Elara, standing amidst the rubble, felt the weight of the fallen, the sacrifices made to ignite the spark of change. The central chamber, once the heart of the last god's control, now pulsed with a chaotic energy, the remnants of the exploded construct and the disrupted energy fields creating a volatile atmosphere. Elara knew that this space, this nexus of power, held the key to the next phase of the reverse genesis. As she surveyed the chamber, she noticed a shimmering anomaly, a rift in the fabric of reality that pulsed with the last god's fading energy. It was a manifestation of their control, a tether to the world they had shaped. Elara, feeling a surge of her unmaking power, approached the rift, her hand outstretched. She felt a connection to the last god's mind, the sense of their fear, their desperation, their clinging to the last vestiges of their power. She saw visions of their past, of their rise to power, of the choices they made, the compromises they had accepted. She saw their loneliness, their isolation, their fear of the unknown, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a pang of empathy, a recognition of their shared humanity, or whatever was left of it. But then she remembered the world they had created, the stagnant reality, the suppressed lives, the stifled potential. She remembered the faces of the fallen, the sacrifices made for freedom, and the empathy turned to resolve. She focused her power on the rift, unraveling the threads of magic that bound it to the last god. The rift shimmered, pulsed, and then began to tear, its edges fraying like the edges of a worn tapestry. As the rift widened, a surge of energy erupted from it, a chaotic wave that washed over the citadel, shaking its foundations and disrupting the remaining constructs. The sky above the citadel, once a fixed expanse of unchanging azure, began to crack, fissures spreading across its surface like the veins of shattered glass. The rebels, witnessing the spectacle, gasped in awe and fear. They saw the sky, the symbol of the god's dominion, begin to fracture, signaling the beginning of their final downfall. Elara, her power reaching its peak, felt a sense of release, a shedding of the last vestiges of the god's control. She was no longer just a weaver, no longer just a rebel. She was a force of change, a catalyst of the reverse genesis.